Good evening, Browns fans, and welcome to the Gang of Three. And we shall be a gang of three, I swear it. Lane Atkins popped into the green room a few minutes ago and disappeared, so I'm guessing he's wrestling with his camera right now. How you doing, Pete?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. We got a lot to talk about today, so we might as well get to it. Uh, even though they're not making a ton of headlines, there's still a lot going on with the Cleveland Browns, and we are here to dissect it on Gang of Three over the course of the next hour. Some of the biggest stories, I guess the biggest story this week is the overhaul of the offensive line. They didn't do it all this week, but the line is coming together. You got Titus Howard from Houston. They signed him to a 3-year extension. He's at right tackle. You have Zion Johnson, who got paid 3 years, $49.5 million in what some are arguing is an overpay at left guard, I'm guessing. Elgton Jenkins signed from Green Bay, 2 years, $24 million, most likely playing center. Tevin Jenkins re-signed, probably right tackle, replacing Wyatt Teller. Wyatt Teller, of course, is gone. Ethan Posick and Cam Robinson are unsigned. So that leaves us with a little bit of a mystery at left tackle, does it not, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, from a numbers perspective, they've got 3 with DeJuan Jones, with Titus Howard, and then KT Leviston. So the natural thing would be the 4th tackle is going to be whoever they intend to draft. My personal opinion, I'd like them to get something else in there to make sure that they don't have to go chasing in the draft, but I don't know if that will change the dynamic anyway. But either way, that is clearly the thing that they have to address in some form or fashion, because as much as anyone can like DeJuan Jones, and he's been pretty good as a pass protector when healthy, you can't bet on it because he's had 3 season-ending injuries, and they've all been to, I think, the same leg.
Right. Yeah, just a big dude, and it's unproven whether or not he can stay healthy. I would suggest Adam on Facebook says, rest assured that Andrew Berry has a great record at drafting tackles. Kind of a low blow. James Hudson is still finding work, even if Jed Wills is not. At any rate, big hole at left tackle at this point. Given what the Browns went through last year, would you say that this line is an improvement over last year's line yet or not? Or are we sort of holding serve where we are with this line?
I think ultimately the answer is not yet known. I think the potential is there for this group to be better. Zion Johnson is an aspirational sign. He has not played to be a $16 million tackler, whatever it ends up being right now, or guard.
Right.
But the talent, he has all the tools to be a highly successful guard, and he's been durable. So if George Warhop and whatever the progress that Zion has made on his own can now sort of really come to fruition this year, he can be really good. Elgton Jenkins is a really good player. It's just a question of health for him. He's the perfect type of guy they needed to go get. When healthy, which is the key, the theme here, Tevin Jenkins was better than Wyatt Teller was last year. That is a big ask considering his track record for staying healthy isn't great. He was coming in and out of games last year because he was dealing with a really, really bad shoulder injury. I am fine with it from the standpoint of having a line that you roll out in March and April, but certainly, there's room for improvement there if they can find it. And then the tackles are largely unchanged. I mean, you're missing Cam Robinson, who wasn't great, but at least was a professional tackle. So depending on if you sort of project a tackle onto this group in the draft and the growing pains you may get there with that, the line could initially be a little bit sluggish, but hopefully over the course of the season, so long as they stay on the field, it should get better. Titus Howard should stabilize the right tackle position, which you couldn't have last year with Jack Conklin. That should be an upgrade just by virtue of he should be on the field. So, I mean, the bottom line is the Browns have a lot to prove in that capacity. So it's not the answer anyone wants, but it is where they are.
All right. The three amigos are here, by the way, as Lane has arrived. Lane, we were just talking about this year's line compared to last year's line. Even though there's a bit of a hole at left tackle right now. What are your thoughts in terms of whether the Browns are going to be better off with Monken's scheme in this line and George Warhop than they were last year?
Well, I'd feel much more comfortable with George Warhop as the offensive line coach going into this year, along with the talent that they've secured up to this point. While you can look at it and say that, you just signed a bunch of guys. Well, basically, when you get an offensive lineman in free agency, you get an average or plus type lineman, and it's their desire and their offensive line coach and the scheme that put all this together to get these guys working, gelling, working in unison. So as far as the moves that they've made, I think they've improved themselves. It's going to be curious to see what happens at left tackle because, that's a hole. You signed a guy from Green Bay that can play left tackle in a pinch. You have questions about Jones. The swing tackle. Can he be the left tackle? I mean, he's lost a ton of weight. And he looks physically good, but we just don't know. You don't know until they get out on the field and they start working to see what they really have.
Yeah, for sure. But, we've got that hole at left tackle right now. It's assumed that either pick number 6 or pick number 24 is going to go for an offensive tackle. The question is when, but why don't they just sign Taylor Decker in? Answer the question. Decker has to be coming, sort of around to his true value at this point in the process. And then you can just do pretty much whatever you want, quarterback, wide receiver, at pick 6 and 24, and you're not as worried about filling that hole in the offensive line. Steve, what do you think?
The issue with Taylor Decker is he is, at least last year, he played through an unbelievable amount of pain. And his shoulder is in horrible shape. And I don't think it's a financial issue for him. I think if he plays another season, it's going to be for a team that is going to be a contender. I don't think he has any intention of dying on the field to see if the Browns can get 8 wins. It just doesn't make any sense for either side realistically. And the video of him talking about it is genuinely heartbreaking. He is in.
Yeah, I remember that.
What he was going through on a weekly basis just to get on the field and try to compete. So I would not shock me. There are 2 scenarios where I could see it playing out. If somehow San Francisco trades Trent Williams, which they don't seem to be doing, I think he'd walk into San Francisco and play there. Or he will wait until closer to the season, see if there's a hole somewhere on a contender, and then jump in and try to help out there and maybe even only play half a season or something like that. Because, again, it's not a financial element. It's not like the Browns can just – or if they would, the Browns would be throwing a bunch of money at a guy just to convince him to play for money. But there's just no real benefit. I think there are guys out there that make sense for sort of these short-term, like filling the hole for the sake of not forcing the draft pick. Joe Noteboom's the one that makes the most sense to me simply because I don't think he's going to cost very much. And he just played for the Ravens, so he's got that whole – guy who played in the previous system has a knowledge on how it sort of works with these, in addition to, obviously Warhop does as well. But, these coaches, a lot of these coaches like to get those guys that were at the previous stop to sort of help with the transition.
Yeah, I understand that. Lane, any thoughts on being proactive at that left tackle position?
Well, you bring up Taylor Decker, a player who played well previously, career is in decline, serious issues where he had to fight through just to play at the level he played at. I don't think that's the wisest move unless it's on the absolute cheap, which I wouldn't expect because that means he wouldn't have gotten any offers anywhere else, and I don't see that happening either. Pete brings up Noteboom, who it makes sense, a guy who's been in the system, serviceable, could give you a little bit of a better handle on the position, at least give you depth in the long run. When
Yeah.
you talk about pick 6 and 24, and everybody assumes that this thing's just going to be that's a wide receiver or a tackle, and then a tackle or a wide receiver. I wouldn't jump to that conclusion all too quick either, because I think there's going to be some things that shake out here in the next month when we get to this draft that's going to could ultimately surprise a little bit.
Uh, okay. Would the Browns, in your opinion, would they be willing to consider some sort of defender at that position after all the bad press they've gotten at being so defense heavy?
Well, I think what you're going to see is that as they go through their process and they rework the board and work this, they're going to see where those first few handful of picks come out, and they're going to decide what they want to do. You know, you look at a draft and you want to get the best available talent you can get for yourself. And if that means, say, you get a playmaker who can play in the secondary, then, you know, that may be somewhere where they look to. You know, trading down from 6 is somewhere that I fully expect them to be investigating. I think they want to accumulate more opportunities and still have the opportunity and potential to draft one of these best wide receivers and better offensive tackles. So when you're sitting at 6, don't sit and think that that's where it's going to be, because I think that's a wide open spot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they may be aiming for 2027 in the draft, but it's very tempting to get 3 first-round picks this year.
Well, look at it this way. If you sit back and you look at it, you're sitting at what, 6, 24, 39, something like that. That number 6 pick with the right team is going to pull you in 2 1s, depending on who it is. And if things start shaking out up there where it becomes a desirable spot for more than just, say, a specific team, you know, the ante goes up, especially if you can move around a little bit. So I would strongly suggest that everybody take a deep breath, because this thing has the opportunity to get very interesting with this team once we get to that time.
Yeah, draft cave day 1 will be pretty interesting, I think. But I wrote earlier this week, Pete, about Monken really liking to have a lot of bodies on that line. He doesn't look like he's going to be lining up Aiden Huntington at fullback, but they did bring a fullback in to take a look at this week, Michael Burton, I believe. It was a guy that they looked at. And they're also messing around with a lot of tight ends. I mean, they got Jack Stoll. They re-signed Blake Whiteheart today. It looks like Monken is sort of fishing around trying to figure out how he can get some extra bodies on that line, even with the left tackle spot still vacant.
Well, I mean, they've signed bodies. I don't know. I mean, I know the organization is making a big deal about the signing of Jack Stoll. He's there for basically a minimum contract and plays special teams and aspires to be a third tight end. Blake Whiteheart is in the same deal. But, like, if I just look at the tight end room and I take Harold Fannin out of it, nobody scares you in that group. Nobody has a particular specified role that's going to elevate this team. So, look, I'm all for them bringing in bodies. They've got Whiteheart. They've got Stoll. They've got Brenton Bates. They got a lot of guys, but, you know, could I see a scenario where by September all 3 of those guys are out the door? Yeah, I could. They, you know, I don't think they're done. I don't think they should be done. I think they look at that inline tight end as an opportunity to get better. This draft has a good amount of talent at the tight end position, depending on how you want to play it. So we'll see if they do that, if they investigate a trade. Or something along those lines. The free agency options went pretty quickly. There aren't a lot of good options that left, which is why they've sort of, you know, amassed this, you know, the scrub squad they've got there. But, like, it certainly, at the very least, it signals an intent to invest in that position, I would think.
Yeah, you know, they go and they sign Stoll. You know, the guy can block. I mean, if you're looking for 5-yard completions off the line, he can help you do that. But this team is going to select a tight end in the draft. There is absolutely no doubt that another tight end is going to come in here that can play off of Fannin and give them the opportunity to be productive and efficient at that spot. I don't expect a trade because everything is pretty quiet on that front, especially the tight end position in free agency, just like it was at wide receiver and quarterback. They just didn't want to invest in that when they know that they got opportunities coming in the draft that they can get a tight end that fits into what they're looking for on the cheap.
Yeah, let me throw a name out there, a guy on a team that's really tied up against the salary cap, Cole Kmet. He's not available right now, but I would think that the Bears might have an interest in perhaps moving him. Does he fit the type of role do you think that they would want, or is he too similar to Fannin?
No, he can play in line. It's just a question. With that, it comes down to how motivated the Bears to actually move him and price point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think we saw this Michael Mayer last year. The Browns weren't willing to sort of pay enough to convince the Raiders to move on from him. They basically let it go. If the Bears are willing to move, price him to move, I'm sure the Browns would at least be interested because it would solve a problem immediately. Even if you then go into the draft and get another guy. I mean, that was my ideal scenario anyway. When Charlie Kolar was available, was you get Charlie Kolar, then you draft the guy behind him because tight end is not necessarily an easy position to walk into in the NFL because it's just so demanding physically and mentally, just in all the ways you have to do it. But nevertheless, if the price is too high, they can go into the draft. There are a number of guys that I think make a lot of sense. Max Clare and Sam, certainly from Ohio State. As I wrote today and said a lot, find me a tight end who has had a better year than he had as a sophomore for Purdue. He had 30% of their receiving yardage as a sophomore, which is just insane. And then, the other end, another productive tight end who I think will do the dirty work, even though he's really tall and has short arms, is Sam Roush from Stanford. As another guy, he's there to do dirty work and has a whole lot of family members who have been in the NFL. So those are guys that stand out to me. I think you can go later maybe and get like a guy like Dallin Bentley. The Browns have intent to meet with Oscar Delp, who played at Georgia. He's athletically very gifted. His production is not very good, but the thing with tight end is it's one of those where athletes can sort of translate and outperform at the NFL level. Is Oscar Delp going to be that guy? I don't know, but there's familiarity there and there's reason for them to look at a player like him.
Yeah. Well, comment here from Movie Fan. He says Clare was disappointed at OSU, but they hasn't figured out how to use a tight end since he's been there. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I'll be honest. I watched the tape and I sat there. I'm sure I'm not the only person who watched Ohio State and goes, "Why is he not getting the ball more?"
Vastly underutilized talent in that Ohio State offensive scheme. They didn't do any justice to that guy or tight ends on that roster. Kazmarek, everybody else. They had the opportunities, and getting in the weird personnel decisions that they made, taking receivers and tight ends and taking them out of the equation was, one of the issues there. Clare projects to be a very good tight end at the next level in the right scheme.
The other thing with Clare that I don't think people understand is he was a much lighter at Purdue. So he put on more weight to play at Ohio State. And I think the early part of the year, he still looks like he's acclimating to that weight. But over the course of the season, he got better. And the other thing that people do not give Clare credit for, he got much better as a blocker. And, you go to the Miami game when the Buckeyes got absolutely trounced on the line of scrimmage. Clare was their second best rated run blocker out of that game, out of the 13 opportunities he had. He gave everything he had in that. And look, if you look at the Browns' history of drafting tight ends, David Njoku, Seth DeVolve, Harrison Bryant, guys like that, all of them were receiving tight ends first, who then got to the NFL and got to the Browns. I mean, Seth DeVolve was a receiver at Dartmouth or Princeton, whichever Ivy League school he went to. And then they put on weight and taught him how to block. that seems to be the pattern with them. And that's something where it makes a lot of sense to me, because I'll be honest, nobody gives a shit if you can block in college if you can't also be a productive receiving threat first. You're more likely to find guys who get excited about guys who can make plays as pass catchers and then figure out how to block, as opposed to the other way around.
All right, the Browns continuing to look around at tight end. If they don't upgrade, can certainly be very disappointed in this that particular portion of the offseason. I just don't see our number 2 tight end on the roster right now. All right, so Browns have been very active at offensive line, but they've got some other needs on this team at quarterback and wide receiver specifically. Lane, someone explain to me why the Browns have not been more aggressive at those 2 positions.
Well, it's our quarterback. When you look at the free agent class of quarterbacks that were available and still are available, you have to question how enticing and intriguing those guys are. I mean, Malik Willis, sure, looked good in Green Bay and the opportunities he had. Are you going to pay him that huge contract that he ended up getting with the Miami Dolphins? In Cleveland, the answer was no, and rightfully so. You're still working through getting your quarterback room situated, and you need to relieve yourself of that last part of pressure that there is. Walking in with Willis would have been, okay, this guy's our starter. So now what do you do with the remaining part of the room? They didn't want to get into that financial type scenario when they really feel that they didn't have to at that price point. And you can look at Tua, same thing. He hot and cold, man. He plays indoors and he plays well. He's very inconsistent. And again, they could have taken the opportunity to bring him in here on that veteran contract, but it wasn't going to happen because he was pretty much set on about 3 different places that he wanted to play, and Cleveland wasn't the destination of any of those. So when you look at still what's available, I mean, the best thing for Cleveland, if they're looking for a quarterback to come in here and help them, would be a guy like Jameis Winston, who we've had here, who's very familiar with Monken. He's respected. He's very good with one of the wide receivers here in Cleveland, Jerry Jeudy, still brought him to his highest accolades as a receiver. The only problem is that they like him in New York, and they like him in the room with Jackson Dart. Him and Jackson Dart got a good relationship going on there. So the odds on somebody like the Giants trading Winston doesn't look good. So where are you going to go to? You got a Kirk Cousins. You got this, you got that. I think right now they're just waiting everything to fall out, because when Geno Smith was gone immediately, they knew that there was not a reason for them to divulge all the salary and more cap space on the quarterback position at that day when everything was expensive, rather than waiting a little bit and to see what plays out here as we get closer into the draft and following the draft when things can happen.
Not only that, but the other side of it, the Browns roster is not attracting anybody. Malik Willis the Browns may have not had any interest in Malik Willis. Malik Willis sure as hell wasn't coming to Cleveland. Looking at what they had, I mean, your sales pitch was an IOU. I owe you one offensive line and a bunch of weapons. And, to me, I think the Browns are going to go to OTAs, see what they have, potentially through the draft, and then reevaluate the situation. One, they will have drafted in addition to the free agent stuff, and they will have a much better looking setup potentially if they do things correctly for what would still be free agent quarterbacks or trades or whatever. Likewise, they will have a sense. Todd Monken will have a sense of if he really likes what he sees from Shedeur Sanders, because you can tell me all day that he's going to look at Deshaun Watson and take this seriously, and I'm going to tell you that this is not serious. You can tell me all day that they're going to look at him and go, "Yeah, we're really doing this." There's no world in which this happens. So he's going to go to camp, and whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, are they going to give you enough where Todd Monken's going to go, "Yeah, this is something I can work with," or are they going to come out of this and go, "I need to get more help"? Either way, the roster should look better in that scenario. And maybe he likes what he's got, but at least at that point, they will have a much better idea of what the offense will look like in the short term to then say, maybe we should investigate whether it's Kirk Cousins or whatever that's sitting out there.
They're taking a look right now through every snap and practice tape that these guys took last year. Every snap. And trying to see and determine what they've done, where have they progressed, where have they regressed, what they don't see. They've actually done the same thing looking at Deshaun Watson in Houston to Cleveland to Dorsey's offense from Stefanski's offense and what happened in the year that AVP was here. They're looking at all this very intently and very curiously to see what they really have here. So when these guys come into the OTAs, they're going to already have a plan started to be established on what they want to do with these guys. Dylan Gabriel, who knows? Shedeur Sanders, he's going to get an opportunity. Deshaun Watson, nobody wants to hear it. Everybody thinks it's a comical thing. The only problem is that if he can move and throw the ball, he's going to get looked at. Just because he's here, do I expect him to be the guy? No. But he's going to get looked at because they're going to be at least respectful to the process in doing so. And don't be surprised if they don't draft a quarterback. They have no qualms if there's a right guy there that they can sit around on. They're going to take him. And that's not even talking about the free agent trade market that's still out there. That room is the most undecided room in the National Football League.
Well, it should be. You know, the guy who's supposedly the number one quarterback coming into the season had a 56% completion record, had 4 more interceptions and touchdowns in his time here. And you can make all the, excuses you want for him. Those numbers still don't look like, a guy who's going to turn around this franchise at all. I'd be very challenged to suggest that Browns fans are going to be enthusiastic if they don't take a look at someone else. Maybe the kid from Penn State, maybe Ty Simpson. What are your thoughts on Ty Simpson, Pete, in terms of whether he would be a fit here or not?
I mean, my initial answer is no. He's not a good fit, and I don't like the talent. I think there's ability there. The issue I have with Ty Simpson is what I know of Monken seems antithetical to what Ty Simpson offers him. In essence, everybody focuses on the legs and having a guy with legs. That is certainly valuable, but it's not the thing. We did the same thing with Kevin Stefanski. People assume what they want about what these guys want in the quarterback. I do think Todd Monken wants somebody who can throw the damn ball down the field and wants who can throw outside the numbers. And that is not Ty Simpson's game. He's not confident throwing outside the numbers. He's not good at throwing those deep outs that Jameis Winston would throw without hesitation. Ty Simpson is more of a West Coast style, work the middle of the field, hit guys in stride, and that type of stuff. He has, some ability to get better at those things. He's too inconsistent. The stunning lack of reps is terrifying to me in terms of passing. He's thrown the ball less than Mark Sanchez did coming out of USC, who was nowhere near ready for the NFL. So I hate that idea. And similarly, I think Drew Allar needs to disappear for a couple years and just learn how to play football because he is so wildly far behind in terms of his development that if he comes to a team like Cleveland, this fan base cannot help itself and gets bored and then decides, oh, we'll just throw him out there and he'll figure it out. And if he doesn't, we will tell him he sucks forever and then move on to the next guy rather than being honest to the situation, being like, this kid's not ready. He's not going to carry this team and he needs a ton of work. And, this is the thing people do where they go, there's no better experience. There's no better teacher than playing live on the field and getting destroyed by the opponent. I respectfully disagree with that process. I think Drew Allar would be fantastic. And this is the benefit when you have a franchise quarterback. If he goes to a team like Green Bay, if he goes to a team like Buffalo, if he goes to some place where you can just focus on being just the process of getting better and all those little details that he never got at Penn State, those are where I see it. So, like, just looking at the quarterback class overall, you'll get people who talk about taking the kid from North Dakota State. Well, he's interesting. However, I would point out that, even among the guys at North Dakota State, I know like Todd McShay thinks he's the best one, better than Carson Wentz. What I would quickly point out is because of the NIL and the transfer portal, this is the worst North Dakota State schedule has ever been because so many of these players are getting plucked by FBS schools. So he's playing a decidedly lower level of competition than even Carson Wentz faced because all those guys are moving up. And even so, he still doesn't have a lot of experience. Cole Payton is interesting from that standpoint, but this is like the theme you run into. Without Trinidad Chambliss in this class, you're getting a whole lot of these guys who are either toolsy and need a whole lot of time, or they're Carson Beck and can't break a window with their strongest pass, where they just offer nothing from the position that you don't already have. I mean, I would love to see Carson Beck and Will Howard have a throw off because neither one of them can throw the ball anywhere down the field. And that's sort of what this class amounts to.
Cole Payton's interesting. I like his athleticism. I like the way he can throw the ball. I don't like how he handles himself in the muddy waters. I think he's a guy that's going to get drafted somewhere. He's going to sit somewhere. And, that's the best thing that can happen for him and a guy like Drew Aller, who has a world of talent, great physical abilities, and went to a school that is so deficient in developing a quarterback. And with a garbage scheme, it took getting the head coach out of there before things started changing in the offensive scheme and passing game at Penn State. And you saw that with their second quarterback. Interesting. Drew Aller, I wouldn't want to see him in Cleveland just because of what would happen to him with this fan base that would just be unbelievable against him. I think he has the opportunity, but again, he's another guy that's going to need to sit for a year or two because he needs a complete makeover. And you can talk about Nussmeier and you can talk about guys like these. Same thing with Carson Beck. I mean, if you want to throw the ball 10 yards and don't worry if it takes 5 minutes to get there, then okay, he's good for you. It'll work. He just doesn't have arm strength at this level. He would die trying to throw the ball and get away with that shit that he does over the middle and in between the hashes at this level that he got away with down there in Miami. Me personally, I'm glad that I'm not a team that wants to take a quarterback early because there's too many questions about this entire class, and that includes the first guy. I have questions about Mendoza too. So I'm glad I'm not sitting here wanting to take a quarterback and thinking I had to because I don't think this is the best class you're going to find it in. Not early, at least.
Now, as a small caveat, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers should go all in on this quarterback class.
Winner.
Yeah, it's time for them to find someone new, and now is the time to do it. So,
well, it's the same thing with the wide receivers. I mean, look what the Browns did. It did a wide receiver. They've done nothing, and the reason is because when you look at the free agency class that was available, it was this thing that started happening where wide receivers command $20 million plus a year. In this class, what was there? Same thing with draft and trade. Yeah, you can turn around and make these deals, but you still got to pay these guys unbelievable money. And that's why the Browns didn't jump in feet first at the wide receiver classes was the offseason started here in free agency and trade because they don't want to pay that. They have no desire to pay that kind of ransom at the wide receiver position. And everybody's going to scream, put their hands up in the air and say the Browns absolutely suck and Andrew Berry has no clue what the hell he's doing. The only problem is that you tell me if you're being responsible and you're trying to build your roster and you have 17 holes and you can fill out a good majority of holes, yeah, you need a bona fide number one wide receiver, and you're walking into a wide receiver class that has some excellent to stud type talent in it. So I'm not spending $20 million plus on a wide receiver. Would you?
No, in fact, I think people have got to get over themselves with Jerry Jeudy because him making $17 million per year for the next 2 years is a real value. for a guy who was a 1,200-yard receiver in 2024. And if they get better quarterback play, I think he can, at the very least, split the last 2 seasons in half and get something along those lines. Alec Pierce getting $29 million a year, he's not had a season as good as Jerry Jeudy did in 2024 with garbage quarterback play.
Yep. I mean, you look at this thing, and you got Jaquan Jennings sitting out there who, he didn't get his payday for, reasons that are more than just football. I mean, you got Ayuk, who San Francisco is holding on to. It's more like a hostage situation now because they know he wants to go somewhere, and he bailed on him. So now it's just a matter of, who's going to play first. But is that what you want in Cleveland? Don't get attached to the name. Don't put the name in lights and say, oh, shit, I got to have this guy because he's been productive somewhere. Look at the whole picture when you get down to it. This is a wide receiver class that this team can make a lot of noise. And I believe solely that's the reason why we're still sitting here, because of that class and not wanting to pay those dollars that are out there.
Yeah, Fumble, our buddy Fumble 13 says draft 2. I assume that he means somebody in the first round and then someone fairly early on day 2. Does that make sense to you, Pete?
I think taking one at 6 makes sense to me, or if they can maneuver down a little bit to do it. Yeah, I'm nervous about the prospect of waiting to 24 because, again, if the goal is to get a number 1 receiver, I think your odds get much worse down that far. I'm not in a hurry necessarily unless the board plays out in a specific way on taking one day 2, and I don't think the Browns will either. I could be wrong on that, but I do think there are going to be values that can be had on day 3 where you can get a very nice player that can add to this room, because ultimately I still think your best plan of attack is to get one premium receiver this year and likely going next year doing the same thing, because next year's receiver class is going to be outstanding as well. They all are. There's never a bad receiver class, but next year's is going to be particularly good. So your whole thing is whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, or the guy that's going to take that job next year, is trying to build out that offense as much as possible to improve the situation. There are a number of guys I've highlighted. No, Chris Bell does not tempt me at 39. He doesn't tempt me at 50. He doesn't tempt me at 70. He doesn't tempt me at 100 and anything. Chris Bell is coming off a major knee injury, and he wasn't good. He's interesting, but I can give you a whole bunch of receivers that were way more productive. Chris Bell was a senior breakout. I understand the appeal. He's 220 pounds and all these things, but when you get into the splits with him, they're wildly underwhelming in terms of yards per route run and average yards after the catch and just doing those things. It's not promising at all, on top of the fact he's got a major knee injury. So why would I want to take – I don't like drafting injured guys at all, because, look, it's difficult enough to make it into the NFL as a rookie anyway. So adding on major rehab, even if you think, oh, he's going to be ready by insert date. Well, he hasn't practiced yet. He hasn't done anything. And the track record on taking injured guys isn't good. Yeah, there are some that work out, but it's really bad. The other part is I don't like him either. The other thing we take for granted is it's an ACL tear. We have gotten to a point where we're like, oh, ACL, he's fine. A lot of these don't go well. Go back to Odell Beckham's ACL surgery. That did not go well. Or even Devin Bush's ACL surgery did not go well. On top of that, let's say it goes as great as humanly possible and you get the best possible result for an ACL injury, and then they do it again. It feels like their career is already over, and you use a second-round pick on a guy where it feels like his career is over. And I'll give you the example of the running back out of Texas that Carolina took coming off an ACL injury. Everybody thought he was going to be the best running back in the class. Looked great. I thought he was awesome on tape and all these other things. They drafted him in the second round. Well, what did he do? He got to Carolina and tore his knee. He hasn't done anything for the team yet. So you're getting absolutely nothing out of this player. So I think it's really dangerous to be like, well, yeah, ACL, no big deal. It's your knee. You need these to function in this game. Like, it's not optional. So I hate drafting injured guys, but that's just me. Like, Chris Bell has his fans. I'm not one of them. In a world where he's perfectly healthy, great. And I saw like Tony Pauline talking about teams taking him in the end of the first round. Love it. As long as it's
nonsense.
I absolutely love it. By all means, San Francisco, take him at the end of the round and let a better player fall. Like, I highlighted a guy who I think is infinitely better in terms of what you get in terms of the breakout, in terms of efficiency, in terms of all those things, in Eric McAllister from TCU. He's just a better player, and I took him in round 5.
Well, Pete, Jackson McCurry wants to know who you do like, but you're not allowed to say Makai Lemon.
Well, then I won't say how much I like him. I like Carnell Tate. I just don't like him as much as I like the other guy.
I'll say it for Pete. Makai Lemon.
I like Omar Cooper. I just don't like him in the first round. I think he's a really, really good second-round pick.
Yeah.
In terms of the aesthetics, I don't like Denzel Boston. I don't like watching him on tape. But the numbers are really promising with him. I love Casey Concepcion. I like him better. He'd be my third receiver in this class. But again, if you go down to the board and you're like, who should I get that makes sense? Because here's the thing, like when you're talking about, if we're talking about taking a guy at 6, we were talking about trying to get a number 1 receiver. Anything after that, you have to figure out what this really means to you. Are you really trying to push Jerry Jeudy down to 3, or are you then trying to get a new number 3 receiver? What do you really want to pay for a number 3 receiver? It's probably not a second-round pick. It may not even be a third-round pick. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad investment, but it's not really exciting because if you get whoever you took at 6, be it let's say it's Tate for Buckeye honks, you have Jerry Jeudy at your number 2. Harold Fannin is somewhere in that mix right there. He's either 2A, 2B. He could even be sort of 1B. So that receiver really becomes the 4th option. So I'm not really that excited about throwing a ton of assets at it. So again, Eric McAllister from TCU, I think is great. Ted Hurst from Georgia State is really intriguing.
Yes.
You get Kevin Coleman from Missouri, who's intriguing. If you get Tate, you want a slot type player. He's certainly in that mix. Even Antonio Williams at Clemson has not been super productive, which is a little bit worrying, but he's at least really interesting, and it really just depends on price point. But there are a lot of guys like, hell, here's the kid. I know I'm not the only one on this bandwagon, but if the Browns were to take Carnell Tate, I would absolutely love to get Eli Heidenreich from Navy late in the draft, who can be a fantastic slot receiver. I'm still not sure if it was a typo or not, but allegedly ran a 6'5" 3-cone at 200 pounds and was one of the most productive receivers in the country at Navy as what was technically a fullback. So there's a lot of these guys where I think you can get way more value than for what you're asking for. So again, this is where my whole thing on the receiver thing is, if you really want to get a receiver, I think you should aim for getting a number 1 receiver, not just sort of collecting receivers.
Fair enough. Well, there's a little bit of rubble left in the wide receiver class after Pete got done with that. Let's talk about another guy who's jumping up draft boards in a position of interest to the Browns, and that's Monroe Freeling. Unbelievable at the combine lane. That 9.99 RAS score, that size, just the lack of games he plays. The only thing that gives me pause at this point.
As far as the RAS scores are concerned, something strange is going on with that, because there's been a few scores that come out of here in the last year that just have been unbelievably outstanding, and you have to question, especially with guys who haven't played a lot. I like Freeling. I think he has the opportunity to be a good tackle. But you better be patient, because he's not that guy who's ready right now. You have a couple of guys, you can look towards Utah, somewhere out there, who may be more versed to play much earlier than him. And when you look at it, that left tackle thing, there's a guy in Miami that this organization got looked at a couple times. I'll leave you guys to find the name because I don't want to talk about it. But as far as Freely is in at Georgia, I think he has the opportunity and potential to be a good tackle. I think it's going to take time. I think he can use some work on his strength. I think he can use some work on his feet and his base a little bit. And what he's going to see at the next level compared to what he would generally see at Georgia is going to be a thing. So I don't see the Browns taking him at 6. I'm very, very reserved that they take a tackle at 6. I could, if they trade down, and maybe it's another question, but I'm not feeling the tackle at 6 right now.
When I talked to Tony Pauline for This Side Up, one of the things he mentioned about Freeling is, he tested really well. He's also gassed at the end of the workout, while the guy who actually had the best workout wasn't even close was Spencer Fano, who also did a 7.33 cone, which is insane. He just moves different than everybody else. So,
where did he go to school?
Yeah, he went to Utah, and he, the guys that him and Lomu are both really impressive and have the things that NFL teams covet, which is feet, really, really good feet. And they also have guys who have done it that played at Utah before, and guys, one of them made All-Pro, which is Garrett Bolles. Mm-hmm. The difference is that I think Garrett Bolles came out at 24 years old and was barely, not even 300 pounds, where these guys are both in the mid 310s, both tested really well. Lomu might be a year away from being what he needs to be, but I don't think that's different from Freeling. And I think the margin between those two is really small. Yeah, Freeling has longer arms and bigger hands. Okay. And I love the way he bends for his height. It's great. But and given the margins in this draft, where the top of the board, I think the margins are so thin, I think you can make the case that you can take him or a lot of these other guys. But the thing is, I still have to look at this and go, it's a top 10 pick.
Yep.
If it's quarterback, I get it. But if you're telling me you're trying to sell me on an investment plan for a top 10 pick, I think that gets a lot of people in trouble. And look, say what you will. I know there are a lot of people who think they're really confident Todd Monken's going to be here for a couple of years. Andrew Berry, we'll see. But I don't know that either one of them can afford to sit around and wait for Monroe Freeling to figure it out. And maybe George Warhop goes, he's great. I love him. I can coach him up and get him ready to go. But if he's getting dusted right off of week 1, what's going to happen. Fans are going to absolutely crush this kid who's trying to figure it out. And that's going to be true of whoever they take. But regardless, it's the 6th pick in the draft. And that makes it really, really tough to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the 6th pick of the draft, you have to have a guy who's going to step right in here. You really want a guy who can help change the game, who can be a determining factor on helping you when you're looking at the 6th pick of the draft, especially a team like the Browns who don't have those guys. So when I look at that 6th pick, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that can change the complexion of a game. And that's when I look at Freeling, I'm going, no, not yet. It's going to be a guy who's probably going to take a year. That's why I think the guys at Utah are more of an immediate, even though I think they're a ways off a little bit too, but I think they're more an immediate. And that's where I don't want to see them expend like a 6 and a 24 if they trade down to 12, 20, and 24, whatever. If that's 6th pick, you got to get somebody who's going to make a significant difference in the game from the get-go.
Yeah, like I was saying, McShay's draft had Freeling going around 17. That seems about right to me in that first round. 6. It's 6.
That makes sense.
Look, you can make the argument that based on the relative strength of this draft, that it's just not as good as other draft classes where maybe he goes at 17. But in terms of just return on investment, and you can make the case that, well, if he's great, in 2 years, no one will care. Ultimately that's true, but those growing pains suck and you still have to endure them. So, if you're thinking he's going to be Colton Miller, well, Colton Miller went 15th. That's a hell of a lot more, palatable than 6. 6 is a big pick.
Yeah. Trade down just seems more and more appealing the more the more we talk here, at least to me. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the areas of need in the draft. One other thing sort of arose this week, and that is the Browns made a rule change proposal that would allow teams to trade up to 5 years out with draft picks. And the first thing I saw from the media, it was either that means that they're going to go after Arch Manning and trade all their picks, from here to eternity, or they're going to trade Myles Garrett. I'm not sure it means either one of those things. To me, it just seems like this is an Andrew Berry type thing where he sees draft picks as an asset and he wants to be able to do whatever he wants to do with them. Do you agree with that, Lane, or do you think that there's a nefarious purpose behind this suggestion of a rule change?
Well, you never know when it leads to somebody in an organization making that request of change. But, actually what it is just an avenue of opportunity for you to start, playing the game to see how you want to progress and build up your resources. And if an opportunity that would come along sort of strikes you, and there you are, you have that rule change that gives you the opportunity to do it. If you look at what defensive ends, pass rushers are going for, you may not be surprised what somebody may offer for a Myles Garrett.
Right.
So, having those opportunities and that in your war chest to do something with, I think that it's too Ted Stepien-ish for me.
Yes.
So I don't think it's the best idea, known the man. So I hope it doesn't go through. But I can understand why teams may be intrigued by it just because it gives them an opportunity.
I hate everything about. Look, I understand it creates a ton of avenues for team building, which on its face is really interesting. It also creates the very real possibility that you're going to have a team mortgage everything and then screw it up. I don't know, trade for Deshaun Watson and give him $230 million, and then decide, well, we're screwed for the next however many years, and then trade so that they've got 5 first-round picks in 5 years. Your fan base has to endure that. And it just creates the possibility that you are going to have functionally dead teams, which look at the NBA. I cannot fathom the idea that they're literally talking about expansion right now when the amount of teams that are not even trying. The Washington Wizards are in year 12 of their rebuild. And I don't know I don't see any hope in sight for that team. There's a point of no return where the NFL does itself significant damage. There's 2 things that work here. One, it protects GMs from themselves. GM on the hot seat told, I need you to win football games. Well, okay, I can trade away all these assets because if I get fired, I'm not going to be able to use them anyway. Or 2,
right,
you have an owner who is in an advanced age and may or may not live in Dallas who decides, I don't know how many seasons left I have, so I'm going to trade all my picks and let the next generation deal with it. There are just a multitude of ways that this goes very wrong, and you have what amounts to be a dead franchise. And, say what you will. Their team, you can sit here and look and go, well, I think the Arizona Cardinals are tanking, or I think the New York Jets are tanking, or I think the Miami Dolphins are tanking. There have been 2-0 for teams. We all think so-and-so's tanking, and then certain team does dumb shit and wins their last 2 games of the season to ensure they are not in position to take the quarterback. So they're not very good at it if they are. I don't want to give them reason to be better at it.
That kind of echoes. I wrote about that earlier this week, and the common theme in the comments that followed the bloviation that day were, we don't want to give Haslam, the ability to screw things up even worse. So there's no faith. Stepien's name keeps coming up. Cleveland has just been burned by this.
They changed rules in the NBA because of Ted Stepien. He this is what he did. And you don't think for a second if they agree to this that some jackass in the NFL is going to do the same thing. It's going to happen if they adopt that rule. It's just nonsense.
I can see the Cincinnati Bengals doing it as a cost-cutting measure. Just say screw it. We're going to trade it down to the studs because we're never going to be able to afford it. So we're going to get 10 first-round picks and see if we can build the team that way and then win as a result. Like it's a very dangerous way to allow teams to think. Again, as a thought experiment, very interesting. In practicality, I think it goes very badly very quickly.
All right. So not a popular move here on the Gang of Three. Browns. One guy I wanted to ask you about, both of you. This Callie Davis, the defensive tackle, signed from the 49ers, going to apparently play behind Malik Collins. Are you reading anything? Let's start with you, Lane. Are you reading anything into this about Mike Hall?
No.
Is it just no more depth, or there's
They do
nothing?
completely different things.
It's entirely different situation, and really a different role as well.
Okay.
You're looking at Malik Collins, who's going to come off injury. It's going to be a slow process with him. Mike Hall, you never know when he can play and when he won't play. And you had a veteran defensive tackle who most likely is out of Cleveland, period. So, the opportunity to get a younger guy who showed some average plus potential. They PFF and everybody throws these crazy ass numbers around and they say people suck, but when you watch that team play and the role the guy plays in, they play pretty well. So I don't have any qualm, especially with the kind of deal. It's good for the Browns to add that type of depth to protect themselves.
The advanced metrics suck. The tape's pretty interesting. Just the way he operates is a really good run defender, or can be a really good run defender in the type of defense the Browns employ. He played for Robert Saleh, who obviously Mike Rutenberg knows well. One phone call away from getting everything that you could possibly need to know about Kalia Davis. And the other part about this, the signing of Kalia Davis prevents the Browns from doing absolutely nothing. It's a small contract. If it doesn't work, they could theoretically cut him. Not that I'm expecting that to happen, but it doesn't prevent them from doing anything. It's a useful piece, certainly younger. I would let Shelby Harris play forever. His body won't, and he's going to be 35 in August. So I don't know how realistic that is. And Kalia Davis, he's coming off a year where he started every game for the 49ers. If he can keep that going and maybe take another step forward, the Browns may get a really nice value. And these are the type of swings I want them to take. But again, if they get to training camp and he either gets hurt, which he's had a habit of, or it just isn't working, they can go pick somebody else up and bring them in and move on from this kid if they have to.
Right. Well, you guys unfortunately have left me with 3 minutes left in the program. And I've exhausted most of the major topics, so I'm going to ask you just a sheer opinion question. Joel Bitonio may retire, may not retire, may go play for somebody else. We don't know. He's not coming back to Cleveland, most likely. But assuming his career ends now, would you put Joel Bitonio in the Cleveland Browns Ring of Honor? Start with you, Lane.
Wow.
Of course. I'd put him in the Hall of Fame.
He was an exceptional Cleveland Brown offensive lineman throughout his entire career, and that deserves recognition.
All right.
He may not be popular right now. I'd put J.C. Treader in the Browns Ring of Honor. He's a hell of a player for this team, even though whatever he's doing, the union may not be great. But
right.
If people want to put Jarvis Landry and these guys in the Ring of Honor, there are players who have done far more than they have that deserve recognition. Joel Bitonio is the easiest guy to put in. He may never get in, but he absolutely deserves to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, he certainly doesn't deserve to be in the Ring of Dishonor with Hugh Jackson, so that's a start.
All right, so we're definitely keeping him out of the Ring of Dishonor. Ring of Honor, Pete's for and sort of leaning toward here. But that'll be interesting to see. He didn't play the most glamorous position and all that. And sometimes, organizations get anal retentive about that sort of stuff. But, we'll see how it goes. But great career here in Cleveland, no matter what. obviously, we wish him well unless he goes to play for Baltimore or Pittsburgh. All right, that is it for Gang of Three on a Monday night. Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. We will be back next Monday night for yet another Gang of Three. And thanks so much for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. We'll see you all next Monday. Good night, everybody.